welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are traveling back, way back, to a real turning point in Western art.
We are indeed. We're looking at a man whose reputation was just immense, even in his own time.
Right. His contemporary, the chronicler Giovanni Villani, he didn't mince words, called him the most sovereign master of painting in his time.
It's incredible praise. We're talking about Giotto di Bondone, born around 1267, and he really is that pivotal figure, late Gothic, proto-Renaissance, whatever you call the period. He's the one making the break.
A decisive break, you said, away from that very stylized, very flat Byzantine look that had dominated for, well, centuries.
Exactly. And that's our mission today, really, to get a handle on Giotto's revolution. We have some amazing, solid evidence, the Scrovegni Chapel, the Florence Campanile design.
But everything else, it seems like smoke and mirrors, his birth, his training,
Right.
sorting the facts from the legends. That's the challenge.
It is, and it's crucial because the stakes are just so high. You have Giorgio Vasari, the big art historian, writing later.
Oh yeah, Vasari.
He claims Giotto basically kickstarted the great art of painting as we know it today, introducing drawing accurately from life.
Drawing accurately from life. I mean, it sounds so basic now.
But Vasari says it was a skill neglected for 200 years. If he's right, Giotto didn't just tweak things. He essentially rebooted Western painting. He sort of ended the Middle Ages, artistically speaking.
Okay, let's wade into this fog then.
Yeah.
Start at the start. If he was so incredibly famous, why is even his birthplace a question mark?
Well, the legend is always better, isn't it? The traditional story, the romantic one, puts him in a farmhouse out in the countryside near Florence. Colle di Romagnano, maybe Romignano.
Right, and there's even a tower house you could visit today claiming he was born there, Colle Vespignano.
Exactly. And that narrative, it really feeds into the idea of this rustic, untaught genius discovered out in nature. Pure talent.
But the paper trail often tells a different story. What's the more recent thinking?
Well, recent documentary finds suggest something maybe less romantic, but perhaps more plausible. He might have been born right in Florence, son of a blacksmith named Bondone.
Ah, so not a shepherd boy at all. A city kid, son of a craftsman.
Which means he would have had access to Florence's whole artistic and commercial scene from the get-go. Makes his rise maybe less miraculous, but, more understandable in a way.
And even his name, Giotto. That's likely a nickname too, right?
Almost certainly. Probably short for Ambrogio Ambrogiato, or maybe Angelo Angelato. But history just remembers Giotto. The name stuck.
Okay, so let's get to the big one. The foundational myth. The shepherd boy drawing sheep on a rock, discovered by the great Cimabue. This is pure Vasari.
It is, and it's brilliant storytelling. Vasari paints this picture. Giotto, this clever, happy shepherd kid out with his flock. Along comes Cimabue, already a big deal Florentine painter.
And he catches Giotto sketching.
Yes, sketching his sheep on a flat stone with, another sharp stone. But the drawings aren't just symbols, they look real, lifelike.
So Cimabue, blown away by this raw talent, just takes him on as an apprentice right there.
That's the story. It neatly connects Giotto to the master before him, but also frames his genius as this innate natural gift. Perfect origin story.
And then there's that other story from the apprenticeship, the one with the fly, that really cements the idea of his skill.
Oh, the fly anecdote. Yeah, supposedly Giotto, while Cimabue is out, painted this tiny, incredibly realistic fly on the face of a figure in Cimabue's current painting.
And Cimabue comes back.
And tries to brush it off. Again and again, until he realizes it's paint. It's the ultimate proof, right? His realism could even fool the master's eye.
But hang on, that story, it sounds familiar. It's not original to Giotto, is it? It feels like something from, ancient Greece or Rome.
You nailed it. It's almost identical to a story Pliny the Elder tells about the Greek painter Zeuxis. The one who painted grapes so real that birds tried to eat them.
Right, so Vasari using that story for Giotto wasn't just saying he was good.
No, it was a deliberate power move. It links Giotto directly back to the legendary artists of classical antiquity, skipping right over the whole Byzantine period. It's basically saying, real art is back, picking up where the Greeks left off. It's historical marketing.
Wow. Okay, so the legend itself is crafting history. What about the story of the Pope's test, the perfect circle? That seems more about his professional clout.
The O of Giotto, yeah. Another great story. Pope Benedict XI, or maybe the one before him, is looking to commission work and wants proof of skill from various artists. He sends a courtier to Giotto.
Asking for a sample drawing.
Right. So Giotto takes a sheet, dips his brush in red paint, rests his arm, and just draws a perfect circle. Freehand, no compass, nothing.
And just hands that to the courtier. I bet the courtier was confused. Or insulted.
Totally. He thought Giotto was messing with him, maybe mocking the Pope. But back at the Vatican, the Pope and his advisors look at all the elaborate sketches from other artists.
Lots of effort, complex designs.
And then they see Giotto's circle. Simple, perfect, effortless. They got it instantly.
What exactly did they get?
Yeah.
That he was good at geometry.
No, it was about mastery, absolute control, confidence, speed. It showed a level of skill and, frankly, intellectual command that was just beyond his rivals. He didn't need to show off with complexity. Perfection was his signature. It really highlights Giotto as this dominant personality, not just a painter.
Okay, so whether through legend or actual skill, his reputation clearly exploded. Let's try to nail down some facts about his early career before we hit the big controversies.
Right. We know he married around 1290, ricevuta di Lapo del Pela, they called her Ciuta, had a bunch of kids, 8 apparently. One son, Francesco, also became a painter.
And by the early 1300s, he wasn't just getting by.
No, definitely not. By 1301, the records show he's pretty well off. Owns property in Florence, comfortable, and already getting major commissions that required travel.
Including to Rome, right, which was a hotbed for stylistic innovation then.
Absolutely. He was definitely in Rome around 1297 to 1300. He did a fresco cycle for Pope Boniface VIII for the huge Jubilee year of 1300.
Anything left of that?
Sadly, just a tiny fragment. It's at the Archbasilica of St. John Lateran now. But more famously, he designed the Navicella.
The huge mosaic for Old St. Peter's facade.
Yeah, a massive undertaking, depicting Christ walking on water. Also, mostly lost now, known only through later copies and bits and pieces. But the point is, very early on, he's getting these top-tier monumental commissions at the very heart of the church.
So back in Florence, there are some key early works that help us track his style.
Yes, definitely. For the Dominicans at Santa Maria Novella, there's that incredible suspended crucifix. It's huge, it's like 5 meters tall, dated around 1290.
And you can already see the difference there.
Oh, yeah. The figure of Christ has real volume, real weight. It's already moving away from that flat, symbolic Byzantine Christ. And there's the body apocalyptic, now in the Uffizi Gallery. That shows his early thinking about grouping figures, creating a sense of space.
Okay, now for it. Assisi, the Basilica of St. Francis. The fresco cycle of St. Francis's life in the upper church, possibly the biggest attribution headache in art history.
It really is the crux of the matter for early Giotto. If he painted that cycle, say, in the 1290s, then he was a full-blown revolutionary right out of the gate. If he didn't...
And the whole timeline shifts. Who influenced whom?
Exactly. For centuries, it was just assumed. These amazing, narrative, emotionally resonant frescoes, they had to be by the young Giotto. It fit the story perfectly. He does Assisi, pioneers the style, then goes to Padua and perfects it.
But the physical evidence, or lack thereof, is a huge problem. Something about Napoleon's troops.
Yeah, a real tragedy for art history. When Napoleon's army occupied Assisi, they apparently used the upper church as a stable, and the Franciscan monastery's archives, which would have held the contracts, the payment records for the frescoes.
They were destroyed, used for bedding, or burned.
Pretty much. So the paper trail just goes cold. No hard proof either way.
So without documents, people just defaulted to the most famous name.
Basically, yes. If a fresco in the upper church looked really good and wasn't clearly by Cimabue, who also worked there, it got chalked up to Giotto. It was convenient.
Until science intervened in the 20th century, what did the technical analysis show?
This was a game changer in the 1960s. They analyzed the paint chemistry. They found white lead pigment used in parts of the St. Francis cycle.
Okay.
And white lead was found in Cimabue's nearby work. But crucially, it was not found in the works we know for sure are by Giotto, like the Scrovegni Chapel frescoes in Padua. His technique, his medium, was different.
So the workshop practices just didn't line up. The chemical signature was wrong.
Exactly. It strongly suggests different artists, or at least a different workshop tradition.
Which leads to a radical rethinking. If Giotto didn't paint Assisi, then who did? And what does that mean for his revolution?
It means the revolution might have been brewing elsewhere, too, possibly among highly skilled Roman artists working in Assisi. Sometimes they're called the Isaac Master or just referred to as Roman masters. They were already exploring naturalism, emotion, architectural space.
But Giotto wasn't necessarily the inventor of that style.
He might have been more the great synthesizer. The one who saw what was happening, perhaps influenced by the Assisi painters, and then took those ideas to an entirely new level of coherence, power, and emotion in Padua.
That really does change the story. It's less a lone genius, more a broader wave with Giotto riding the crest.
Precisely. It makes the Proto-Renaissance a more complex, interconnected phenomenon. But regardless of the Assisi debate, Giotto's fame certainly spread like wildfire. By the early 1300s, he was working all over.
We know he was in Rimini.
Yes, there's a surviving crucifix there dated before 1309. And writers from the time mention him working in Assisi, Rimini, Padua. His reputation was massive. He had large estates, ran a big workshop, which leads us to Padua and the commission that leaves no room for doubt.
Right. If Assisi is the question mark, the Scrovegni Chapel in Padua, also called the Arena Chapel, is the giant exclamation point, done around 1305, UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's considered the masterpiece of the early Renaissance.
It absolutely is. There's no debate here. This is Giotto's vision, fully realized. It's a complete painted environment commissioned by a banker named Enrico degli Scrovegni.
And Scrovegni had a bit of an image problem, didn't he? Something about his father and Dante.
A big one. His father, Reginaldo, was a notorious moneylender, a usurer. So notorious, in fact, that Dante stuck him in the seventh circle of hell in the Inferno.
Ouch. So the chapel was maybe an act of atonement? Trying to buy some goodwill, spiritually speaking.
Very likely. It was meant as a private family chapel, a burial place, but also as a public display of piety. And it was used for an annual religious play, which fits the very narrative, almost theatrical style of the frescoes.
The theme is salvation, with a big focus on the Virgin Mary. Where did Giotto get the stories? Not all straight from the Bible, right?
No, he drew heavily on popular contemporary texts. The Golden Legend by Jacobus de Voragine was huge then, full of saints' lives, and also things like the Meditations on the Life of Christ, which was much more emotional and descriptive than the Gospels.
The layout itself is brilliant. It's not just random scenes. It flows.
Incredibly logical. 37 scenes in 3 horizontal bands wrapping around the walls. You start high up with Mary's parents, Joachim and Anne. Then you follow Mary's life down. Then Christ's childhood and miracles, and the lowest tier is the Passion. It reads like a book, top to bottom, left to right.
And I heard Giotto even uses Christ's posture to keep you moving through the story.
Yeah, it's subtle but effective. Christ is often shown in profile, and his gaze, or the direction he's facing, consistently points you towards the next scene, towards the right, until
the kiss of Judas.
Exactly. That scene breaks the flow. It's the dramatic turning point, signaling the start of the Passion sequence. Very clever visual storytelling.
And below all this narrative drama, there's another layer. The virtues and vices, done differently.
Yes. Down on the lowest level, sort of like a foundation, he painted allegorical figures. Justice, injustice, charity, envy, and so on. 7 pairs. But he painted them in grisaille.
Monochrome gray, like stone.
Exactly like stone statues. It creates this amazing contrast, the colorful human drama of salvation unfolding above, grounded by this stern, classical-looking moral framework below. It's like he's deliberately invoking ancient Roman sculpture, linking Christian virtue to classical gravitas.
Let's talk about the paint itself, that blue.
Yeah.
It's famous for being faded, especially compared to the other colors. Why?
Ah, the blue. It tells a story about cost and technique. The pigment was ultramarine, made from ground lapis lazuli. Insanely expensive, literally worth more than gold back then.
Wow. So Scrovegni really splashed out.
He did, but here's the catch. True fresco technique involves painting on wet plaster. The pigment chemically bonds with the plaster as it dries.
But ultramarine didn't react well with the wet plaster.
It degrades, loses its brilliance when mixed with the lime in the wet plaster. So to keep that stunning deep blue, Giotto had to paint it a secco, meaning on top of the plaster after it had dried.
Like painting on a drywall.
Right, which means it didn't bond chemically. It was basically just sitting on the surface, much more vulnerable to flaking and fading over time. So the faded blue we see is the ghost of incredible expense and a conscious technical compromise.
A compromise for brilliance. Okay, let's get to the heart of it. The Giotto breakthrough. We talk about 3-dimensional figures. How did he do that? What was different from the Byzantine style?
Byzantine figures are often elegant, ethereal, but flat. They float in a golden, symbolic space. Giotto brings them down to earth. He uses light and shadow chiaroscuro to model the forms, giving them a sense of roundness, volume, weight.
So they look solid.
They look solid, like they actually displace space. And he puts them in believable spaces. He uses architecture, landscape elements, painted with a kind of intuitive perspective, not mathematically perfect yet, but it creates an illusion of depth.
Like little stage sets.
Exactly like stage sets. And crucially, he'd place figures with their backs to the viewer. That was radical. It implies the space continues beyond the picture plane, includes you, the viewer. It pulls you in.
But beyond the technical stuff, it's the emotion, isn't it? The faces.
That's the real revolution, I think, the humanity. Byzantine figures often have stylized expressions, representing piety or sorrow. Giotto's figures feel real emotions. Look at the massacre of the innocents. The mother's faces are pure agony.
And that one soldier.
Yeah, the soldier dragging the baby away. He's not just a villain. He looks almost burdened. Ashamed, maybe. It's complex. Or the lamentation over the dead Christ. The grief is palpable. Even the angels in the sky aren't serene. They're contorted, wailing.
It makes these sacred stories feel incredibly immediate, relatable, which ties into what that critic, John Ruskin, said.
Ruskin nailed it in the 19th century. He said Giotto painted the Madonna and St. Joseph and the Christ. Yes, by all means. But essentially, Mama, Papa, and Baby, he made the Holy Family feel like a real family.
Amazing. Before we leave Padua, that star in the Adoration of the Magi, it doesn't look like a typical star.
No, it looks like a comet, a fiery ball with a tail streaking across the sky, and the timing fits perfectly. Halley's Comet made a very visible appearance in 1301.
So Giotto probably saw it and painted it.
It seems almost certain he painted what he saw, and that connection is so strong that the European Space Agency actually named their 1986 probe to Halley's Comet.
Giotto. That's brilliant.
Isn't it? Art history meets astrophysics.
One last Padua anecdote, the one with Dante. Apparently Dante visited while Giotto was working.
Yeah, another story that highlights Giotto's personality. Dante supposedly seeing Giotto's own children who were apparently quite plain-looking.
Unlike the figures in the chapel.
Right, so Dante asks him, how can a man who makes such beautiful things have such ordinary kids?
And Giotto's reply.
Quick as a flash, I make my pictures by day and my babies by night.
Ha! Perfect. It's witty, self-deprecating.
But it also subtly elevates his art, right? The daytime work is inspired, godlike creation. The nighttime stuff is just human biology. It reinforces this idea of the artist as an intellectual set apart, a very Renaissance concept starting to form.
So after Padua, Giotto is basically the biggest name in Italian art. He returns to Florence around 1311, a superstar. But this is where the workshop issue gets really tricky, right?
Yeah.
How much is actually him?
It's a constant question with major artists running large workshops, but we do have one panel painting from this period that pretty much everyone agrees is pure Giotto, the Ognissanti Madonna, painted around 1310.
That's the one in the Uffizi now, often shown near Cimabue's and Duccio's Madonnas.
Exactly, and the comparison is incredible. Cimabue's and Duccio's are beautiful, but still quite Byzantine, elegant lines, lots of gold, relatively flat. Giotto's Madonna is just monumental, solid.
She looks like she has real weight sit on that throne.
She absolutely does. The throne itself has depth. The way her robes fall feels natural. She's less an icon, more a tangible, queenly presence. It's a powerful statement of his mature style.
But then you get something like the Stefaneschi triptych, commissioned by a cardinal for St. Peter's around 1320. We know Giotto got the commission?
We have the documents for that one, which is rare. Cardinal Giacomo Stefaneschi paid him. But when you look closely at the execution, the brushwork, the details...
It doesn't feel quite like the Ognissanti Madonna.
To many scholars, no. The quality varies. It suggests that Giotto likely provided the overall design, the master plan, but a lot of the actual painting was done by assistants in his workshop, probably Roman artists brought in for the job.
So he's becoming more like a director, an artistic CEO.
Inevitable, really, given the demand. He couldn't be everywhere, paint every single panel or fresco himself. Delegation was key.
Back in Florence, though, he undertook some major projects for wealthy families in the Santa Croce church, the Peruzzi and Bardi chapels.
Yeah.
Hugely influential.
Massively influential, especially for later Florentine artists.
Yeah.
But again, controversy. This time it's about the dating. Which one came first?
Because they look so different now.
Radically different. The Peruzzi Chapel, with scenes from the lives of St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist, is in terrible condition.
Why so bad?
Because it was painted largely a secco on dry plaster. Like the blue in Padua, the paint just didn't bond well and has flaked off dramatically over the centuries. It's a shadow of its former self.
Where's the Bardi Chapel next door?
Depicting the life of St. Francis, that one was mostly done in true fresco, on wet plaster. And the compositions are maybe a bit simpler structurally, so it survived much better.
So the debate is, did he paint the ruined Peruzzi Chapel earlier, using the less durable technique perhaps because he was rushed or painting over something else? Or did he paint it later, representing a more complex, ambitious phase of his style, despite the technical choice?
That's the puzzle. The Peruzzi frescoes, even in their ruined state, show incredibly sophisticated architectural settings, real attempts at creating deep, believable spaces. That feels like a later development. But the secco technique often suggests speed or difficulty. It's a classic art historical tussle.
But even ruined, the Peruzzi Chapel was like a textbook for later artists. Masaccio, Michelangelo.
Absolutely. Masaccio, who really kicks off the full Renaissance painting style in the 1420s, clearly studied Giotto's figures in the Peruzzi Chapel. He took Giotto's sense of volume and weight and placed it within mathematically constructed perspective spaces.
So Giotto laid the groundwork.
He did. And even Michelangelo, a couple of hundred years later, is known to have sketched Giotto's compositions in Santa Croce. They were foundational.
Now, the Bardi Chapel, the one in better shape, you mentioned its structure is unusual, not strictly chronological.
Right, that's fascinating. Giotto arranges the 7 scenes from St. Francis's life in a way that deliberately breaks the timeline. For instance, the most famous event, St. Francis receiving the stigmata.
The wounds of Christ.
That scene is actually painted outside the main chapel space above the entrance arch.
So you have to look back as you leave or see it as you enter, separate from the main narrative sequence inside.
Exactly. And inside, scenes that happened years apart might be placed directly opposite each other on facing walls.
Why do that? What's the point?
It forces you, the viewer, to think beyond just following a story. You're encouraged to make connections across the space. Compare Francis renouncing his wealth on one wall with his death on the other, for example. It turns viewing into a more contemplative, symbolic exercise. Really sophisticated.
Giotto's fame just kept growing. He ends up working outside Florence again in his later years.
Oh, yes. His reputation was pan-Italian. In 1329, he gets summoned to Naples by King Robert of Anjou.
Who names him first court painter. That sounds prestigious.
Very.
Oh.
Came with a nice salary, too. But, sadly, like a lot of his work outside Florence and Padua, most of his Neapolitan paintings are lost. Fragments exist, workshop pieces maybe, but the major cycles are gone.
But his final major role brings him back to Florence. And it wasn't painting. It was architecture.
That's right. In 1334, the city appoints him capamaestro, chief architect or master builder for the Florence Cathedral, Santa Maria del Fiore.
And his main job was the bell tower.
The campanile, exactly, which is now universally known as Giotto's campanile. He designed it, oversaw the beginning of the construction, laid the foundations, started the first level with its intricate marble cladding and sculptural program.
Even though he died before it was finished.
He died in 1337, only 3 years after starting. It was completed later by Andrea Pisano and Francesco Talenti, who tweaked the upper levels a bit from his original design. But it remains his architectural masterpiece, a landmark of Florence, and a testament to his incredible versatility.
It's amazing how famous he was during his life. Not just commissions, but being mentioned by the literary giants of the age.
That really sets him apart. Being name-checked by Dante Alighieri in the Divine Comedy, that's the ultimate contemporary validation.
Right, that famous bit in Purgatorio where Dante says basically, Cimabue thought he ruled painting, but now Giotto's got the top spot, and Cimabue's fame is fading.
Cimabue believed that he held the field in painting, and now Giotto has the cry, so the fame of the former is obscure. It establishes Giotto as the new standard, right there in Italy's greatest poem.
And Boccaccio, who actually knew Giotto, gives us that rather blunt physical description.
Yeah, Boccaccio, writing in the Decameron, calls him no uglier man in the city of Florence, which sounds harsh.
But maybe it reinforces the idea that his genius was internal, not physical.
Could be. It certainly fits the narrative of transcendent talent in an ordinary or even unattractive vessel.
And there's that other story from Socchetti that shows his sharp wit and maybe his lack of patience for pretentious clients.
Oh, the coat of arms story. It's hilarious. Some civilian, probably a merchant trying to look important, commissions Giotto to paint his family coat of arms on a shield.
Like he's some great knight.
Exactly. Giotto apparently saw right through the guy's vanity, so instead of painting the actual coat of arms, he covers the shield with every kind of weapon imaginable. Swords, helmets, daggers, chainmail. Just a ridiculous over-the-top display. Armed to the teeth, literally.
The client must have been furious.
Oh, outraged. But Giotto's response was priceless. He basically told the guy, you want to talk about arms, go see the world, fight a battle or two, then come back. Don't act like you're the Duke of Bavaria.
Did the guy sue him?
He did. But Giotto countersued, arguing he had painted arms as requested, and incredibly, Giotto won.
That's amazing. He shows the artist is no longer just a hired hand. He's got status, confidence, he can push back.
Totally.
Oh.
He's an intellectual sparring partner, not just a craftsman. That's a big shift.
So, famous, rich, witty, maybe ugly. But then he dies in 1337, and even his burial becomes a puzzle, the mystery of the bones.
Right, the final enigma. Where was he actually buried? Vasari claimed it was in the Florence Cathedral itself, Santa Maria del Fiore, with a marker.
But others said the older church underneath.
Santa Reparata, yes, the ruins of which are directly beneath the current cathedral floor, and this debate simmered for centuries.
Until excavations in the 1970s actually found some bones down there, near where Vasari suggested.
Exactly. Unmarked grave, but in the right zone. This led to a major forensic investigation around the year 2000.
And the science turned up some pretty specific clues pointing toward the painter.
Really specific, yeah. The bones showed unusually high levels of lead and arsenic.
Which were common in pigments back then.
Very common. Red lead, lead white, yellow arsenic sulfides like orpiment. A painter working with these daily would absolutely absorb them through skin, dust inhalation. It strongly suggested a painter's remains.
And the skeleton itself showed wear and tear consistent with painting.
It did. The neck vertebrae had damage consistent with spending a lot of time looking up exactly what you do painting frescoes on ceilings.
Like in the Scrovegni Chapel or Santa Croce.
Precisely. And the front teeth were worn in a peculiar way, maybe from habitually holding brushes in his mouth while working or mixing colors.
Okay, that sounds like a strong case for Giotto. Painter, working in Florence, buried where tradition said. But then came the bombshell.
The bombshell was the skeleton's height. It belonged to a man who was very short, little over 4 feet tall. Possibly someone with a form of congenital dwarfism.
4 feet tall, that seems unexpected for such a dominant public figure.
It immediately revived an old theory that a small, dwarf-like figure depicted in one of the Santa Croce frescoes might actually be a Giotto self-portrait.
But wait, doesn't that contradict other supposed self-portraits? Like the figure in The Last Judgment in Padua? He looks normal height there.
Exactly. The Padua figure, often identified as Giotto presenting the chapel model to God, looks perfectly average in stature. And surely, if Giotto had been that unusually short, someone like Boccaccio or Dante would have mentioned it. It's a pretty striking physical characteristic to ignore, more specific than just ugly.
So the dwarfism throws a major wrench in the works.
It creates a huge contradiction for many scholars. Is the Santa Croce dwarf figure symbolic, a depiction of an assistant? Are these bones just some other unrelated short painter from the era?
So despite the Italian team reburying the bones with honors, calling them Giottos,
international skepticism remains really high. It led to that famous dismissal by the architectural historian Franklin Talker, who basically said they're probably just the bones of some fat butcher.
ouch. So even in death, Giotto remains elusive.
It's the perfect summary of his whole story, isn't it? This constant tension. His artistic achievement is monumental, undeniable. He changed everything, created this new world of naturalistic, emotional art, the absolute key figure leading into the Renaissance.
No question about the impact of the art.
None at all. But the man himself, his birth, his training, who painted what exactly, even where his physical remains lie, it's all tangled up in legend, controversy, and missing evidence.
It leaves you with this fascinating contrast, the enduring, vivid physical reality of the Scrovegni Chapel frescoes, you can go stand in front of them today, versus the almost complete uncertainty about the physical reality of the man who painted them.
Maybe his legacy was always destined to be the art itself, so powerful, so revolutionary that it just completely overshadowed the biographical details of the artist. Maybe we're meant to focus on the work.
It does seem like the work speaks for itself, perhaps louder than any historical document could.
I think so. Whether he invented the style or perfected it, his genius shines through.
We strongly encourage you listening to look up the images we've talked about, especially those faces in the Scrovegni Chapel, the grief-stricken angels, the conflicted soldier, the human intimacy of Mary and Joseph. You really can witness the revolution for yourself.